All right, I'm banging the gong. Ready? Good afternoon. I would like to call this meeting of the Oldham County Board of Education to order. It's November 23rd, 2020, and we are at the Arvin Education Center. Superintendent, any corrections, changes, additions to the agenda, sir?
No, ma'am, we are good to go.
All right, motion to approve the agenda, please. Made by Mr. Dodson and seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? That's 5-0. Mr. Davis, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Superintendent, we're ready for the treasurer's report.
Ms. Anderson is in the house. If you'll please step to the podium.
That was quick. Welcome, Ms. Anderson. I know, first, right out of the chute, I looked down and I said, whoa, there's no instructional session tonight.
All right, well, we'll start on page 1.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
We have the treasurer's report. This is for the month of October. We have a beginning balance of $35,408,000, and 31.6 of that is in governmental funds. Our receipts on the governmental side are rather slim pickings this month, but November looks much better. Our ending balance for all the funds are $29,044,000. At the bottom section, we've got the bonded construction funds, and as you can see, there's really not any activity from the construction area on that side. On page 2, we have the detail of the governmental funds cash balances. And on page 3, we've got the historical comparisons. So I'm just going to jump into the general fund revenue, the selected accounts. You can see the general property tax on that first line, $46,000. Pretty low, but it is not inconsistent with prior years. Below that are the PSC property franchise tax. That was negligible this month, and we're hoping that that will pick up as time goes on. The delinquent property taxes, we've already beat budget already, so I'm not sure if that's a good sign or a bad sign. At $212,000. The motor vehicle tax, $1.4 million this month, and you can see as we look past to history, we get a nice increase each year on that one. The following two, utility tax and the SEEK program, are exactly where we expected them at this point in the year. In the next section, in the building fund, again, the property tax revenue is low, but that's to be expected at this point. And the revenue FSPK and equalization for both the building fund and the capital outlay are on target. On the next page, we've got the Munis report that shows all your detailed revenue accounts. The only thing I wanted to really call out to your attention, you probably know this already, the building rental and the bus rentals are low. That's kind of expected based on the COVID situation that we're in right now.
Which number are you referring to?
It is 110, 1911, and 1912.
Thank
the two
you.
rentals there. So you can see in the past much higher numbers. I did reduce the budget, but I'm not sure that I'm expecting us to be in COVID quite so long for the field trips. And then a couple, 3 lines down after that, there's a sizable contribution amount, $282,000. That is for a scholarship. And I think that's about all I wanted to say on that page. On page 6, we've got the expenses by category. Our first section is salaries. And while COVID pay is a new item, we do have several costs that are down due to COVID, and those include an item called other certified pay, other classified pay. The substitutes for both certified and classified are also down. So there are some good things with COVID. So really, if we compare our total salaries this year compared to last year, we're pretty flat. We're seeing a very slight decrease in our employee benefits, primarily due to CERS, because the classified salaries are down slightly.
So we really have not gained anything due to the pandemic. It's a wash.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but that's good. I mean, considering we were expecting to have a lot, but, you know, we're still at the beginning of all of this as well. There are some other areas where we've seen some reductions in this next section, professional and technical services. You can see 0338 account registrations for pro fees and professional development are down considerably from some of the prior years. Let's see, if we turn to page 8, we have a considerable amount under construction services, and that is for the LaGrange site improvement. Let's see, if we go to page 10, near the top under special equipment and supplies, 061065, we've got an expense for almost $58,000. That was for bus camera and DVR systems. A little bit down the way, you can see an 0610CV. This is for some COVID supplies that we do have an increase, of course, this year. And then a little bit farther down from there, 0610GV, we've got $17,000 for 2 snowplows. And at the top of the next page, we've got diesel fuel, and there's a considerable drop in that. It does depend on when they gassed up at the end of the year, but as you know, we're not running the buses as much as we have been in the past, so there are some savings there as well. If we go to page 12, under property, the very last line item, 0739, other equipment, $652,000. We've got the South Oldham High School turf replacement in there for $482,000. The North Oldham High baseball lights at $188,000. And we've got Arvin Automotive for $23,000. And if we go to the bottom of this page again, where we've got our grand total of expenses, again, we're pretty flat compared to where we were this time last year.
Ms. Anderson, on, for instance, that item, other equipment, is it possible for you to break that out for us in the report?
I can get you a detail.
You mentioned turf, et cetera, under
Yep.
that.
Yep.
So it would be nice for board members to know
You want the individual pieces of what we're buying in
if
each of
that's
those
possible.
projects.
If
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
possible,
yeah.
for, especially for those large amounts. And when it says other equipment, it's fairly vague.
Well, it's not enough for us to capitalize at this point. It's in a project. At some point, we will move it over and capitalize it.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep, we can get that. Okay, so that was the expenses. The next page are the functional expenses. And I think I've mentioned this before. We are seeing some new categories. For the most part, they're really not new. They're just creating better visibility and transparency on some of these costs that we've always incurred. They've just been hidden. Kind of in the middle of the page, under function 2311, board activities, that is a result of property tax fees. That is not a reflection of y'all going wild and crazy. It's just where we're required to post those expenses. All right, page 17, we've got our summary of bonding potential. That has not changed. Page 18, we begin our balance sheets by fund. And on page 32, we have our income statements by fund. And that concludes the treasurer's report.
Excellent. Questions for Ms. Anderson? All right, motion to approve the treasurer's report, please. Made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Would you take us through bills and claims, please?
Yes, on page 85 are the bills and claims. We've got an invoice count of 1,329. We're still a little bit lower than what we usually are this time of year, and we've got $7.8 million in expenses. On the following pages are the details of each of the checks that we have written to the various vendors, if you have any questions.
Excellent details you have provided. Questions, board members? All right, motion to approve bills and claims, please. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Board members, we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. The first are from October 26, 2020, and that was our regular board meeting. Any corrections or additions? Motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Kehoe, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. We had one special called meeting on November 9th, 2020. Corrections, additions? Motion to approve, please. Made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor? That's 5-0. Thank you. We are ready, Superintendent, for your report of personnel actions, sir.
So there's nothing outstanding about this. It's the typical ins and outs that we see at this time of the year with some retirements, some resignations, as well as some appointments, much smaller than in months past, and we're very happy about that.
Questions or comments? Thank you, Superintendent. We come to the consent agenda, which is items A through G. Your recommendation, Super.
Approve the consent items as presented with the information in your packets.
Joyce, I have a couple questions.
Mr. Kehoe.
On enclosure B, the change orders for the construction,
Okay?
does normally,
I was going to say, I'll probably bring
Okay.
Brennan up here for that, if you don't mind. Mr. Bohan, would you come up to the table?
Hello, Mr. Bohannon.
Hello.
I just saw several change orders for the south project.
Yep.
And the ones I was looking at, does the architect normally review the scope of the work and help you create a plan, a budget of the items that are necessary to put in place, like the extension of the water main? Should we?
Are you talking about before the project is constructed or during the project or both?
Prior to, I guess when his bid is
I would say
coming
the
in.
answer is both, during and before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not seen before construction, I mean,
Well, if you remember, there was a large change order at the beginning of the project for relocating the fire main between the 2 hydrants in the front of the building because it was discovered
I do
that that
recall
was at
that now.
24 inches deep instead of 48 inches deep. So we relocated that to the appropriate depth so that we could get the parking lot to where it needed to be. The one you're referring to for the extension of that to the west, I think it was a $4,000 change, $4,600 change, was to continue that to the location where it needed to be. The first chunk was where the parking lot is, and then this portion was where the front steps was, or the front entry walkway would end up being. And at the time of the first change order, we didn't have the amount that would be. So this was in addition to that. The second part of that change order and the fire protection improvements on the interior building was a change that I had requested of the contractor. It's basically setting up a future phase of construction. So that would be bringing a larger 3-inch, if I'm not mistaken, a 3-inch sprinkler line through the existing portion of the building to the new addition so that when we do future addition to the east end of the building, we'll have adequate fire suppression in that portion of the building. So that portion, we're going to go ahead and do that work now while we don't have kids in the building and set that up for a future phase.
and then the lock mechanism, I think it was the third one.
Yeah, the third mechanism was the original drawings contract had replaced the doors in the auditorium coming out to the new vestibule and reused, salvaged the existing hardware, but upon further review, that hardware needed to be replaced.
Okay.
All right?
Great, thank you.
And that's why I have Mr. Bohannon, always ready to do those things.
Thank you, Mr. Bohannon. So your recommendation is to approve, Superintendent, the consent agenda?
Approve the consent agenda as presented with all the documentation set.
Motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Ms. Hundley. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Thank you. Superintendent, we are ready for some recognitions.
So unfortunately, in the age of COVID, we can't have the students here, but we do have a list of their names. I'll read for them. Hopefully they're watching at home. The Oldham County High School girls cross country team wins state title for the girls division. The girls cross country team from Oldham County High School competed in the state championships and are their 2020 state champions. Congratulations to the strong group of athletes. The state championship girls team roster is as follows: Chloe Boa, Tula Fallbush, Savannah Cagle, Grace Wayland, Sammy Freeland, Ashley Terry, Ella Henage, Avery Holmes, Kinsley Bassett, and Brianna Thornton.
Shall we give them a round
Let's
of
give them a round.
applause? Join me. Good job, ladies.
The next group that we are recognizing tonight is the North Oldham High School boys cross country team wins state title for the boys division. The following members of the state championship roster are Joseph Boyd, Sam Moore, Adam Patel, Evan Patel, Jake Piles, Ethan Ransdale, Cannon Reed, Micah Steinecker, Skylar Taylor, and Randy Wagner.
Excellent. Congratulations, gentlemen.
And I think got all their names right. That's the first time in probably
Almost.
5 years that
You
I'm
did
out here.
stumble over Ethan,
Well, I got into a roll.
E-T-H-A-N, but
Got into a roll.
I was going to let that
You
go.
got close enough on that.
Superintendent report number 1, sir.
So our favorite facilities director will make his way back up to the microphone.
Please. Welcome back, Mr. Bohannon.
Thank you very much. Included in your packet is the construction report update for November. The major projects that we have underway, including the Buckner Classroom addition, the South Oldham High School addition, the progress in the past 2 weeks are included in those, as well as some items I'd like to draw to your attention. Now that we are in another NTI period that, as recently as the Friday, has been extended for the high school, we're going to work with the roofing contractor of Oldham County High School to remobilize and do that last portion of that roof during this session.
Excellent.
The Buckner Classroom addition, I would like to draw to your attention. The item, we had talked about this in the past, but there will likely be a change order request coming in the future for the extension to the contract schedule due to the delays in getting the building permit approval, the plan review approval from Frankfurt Housing, Building and Construction. That is one of those things that was kind of unforeseeable based on where we were with COVID and people working remotely. The Facilities Department and design consultants, to your point, Mr. Kehoe, will verify the validity of those claims before we bring a recommendation to the board either next month or the following month,
Thank you.
depending on how that falls with the board schedule.
Yes, sir.
I will say that for that project, I don't anticipate that, I'm not going to anticipate what the time frame is on that extension request, but I will say that there is room in that schedule to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish in the time frame that we're trying to accomplish it in.
Thank you.
LaGrange partial roof replacement, HVAC replacement. Those projects are in the punch list phases and commissioning phases.
Excellent.
And South Oldham High School is moving along pretty well, actually. Site work continues. As you can see there, the permeable paver parking lot was completed last either Friday or over the weekend, and the days are kind of running together. But the addition on the front is starting to receive the brick veneers being put in place as of today when I was over there.
Excellent.
So that should start looking like a more finished building here shortly. The gym HVAC is operational. They are doing commissioning on that as we speak, as well as fine-tuning some of the tie-ins of the existing heating and air conditioning system with the new system. The gym ductwork, again, with this extended NTI period approaching, we should be able to complete a lot of that work that was going to have to kind of work around Christmas schedules and stuff like that. So look to give you a favorable update for that in December as well.
We will invite Mr. Schumback to celebrate with us when that project is completed.
It was funny, it was actually warm, unseasonably warm for a couple of days, once they got the HVAC up and running, and it felt good in there, even though the ducts weren't in place. East Oldham Middle School is the next major project that we have coming down the line, and as you all know, we approved schematic design last month, and the design team is doing field observations and continuing on, and we should have some more approvals, design phase approvals coming up for that shortly. And then the minor project list there, you can see that there's some updates on those, and I'll have some more updates for those in December. Some of those are, I will draw your attention to the baseball fence to point out, because we had approved a contract for the removal and replacement of that. However, due to continually increasing hazard of that fence blowing around in the wind, we went ahead and had that removed ourselves. So the contractor will revise that contract, and that'll be coming back to you all for approval.
Okay,
With the removal removed from the contract.
okay, excellent.
Any other questions?
Yours might be the one department that the pandemic favors,
It definitely favors it
Did you-
scheduling wise, but
scheduling-wise,
But it-
as long as you can get the people.
yeah, and as long as we
And the-
keep, as
and
long
the
as
products.
we keep whole
Yeah.
companies on site.
Yes, sir. Questions or comments for Mr. Bohannon?
Yeah, because they're always asking tennis courts, so
Yes, I did speak with the contractor who was awarded that contract, and we are working with them seasonally and weather-related to see when that work can get done. And I'll probably have a more specific update on that in December.
Thank you, Mr. Bohannon.
Thank you all.
We appreciate your valiant efforts.
Thank you.
Superintendent, we are ready for report number 2, sir.
We have Mr. Williams for the enrollment projection in a different world of COVID.
Absolutely. Welcome, Mr. Williams. This is really your baby right here.
I guess. And how are you today, Madam Chairman?
Good.
So in your report, you can see how many students we had. And normally, I will preface this, normally we do it at the end of the first month. But at the end of the first month, we were still on NTI. So we held it until at least we could have some live body numbers. So this is actually based on the end of the second month's school enrollment. It really didn't change it much at all, but at least it gave me warm bodies to be able to count. When you look at the accuracy of the projections, obviously every projection over-projected for this school year. But the most accurate projection that we did last year would have been the 10-year district projection, which was at only over-projected by 0.96%.
The superintendent is so disappointed
Can't
in
believe
that
you're that far off, Michael.
0.96% off, Michael.
So you can see how each of the rest of these played out, with ultimately the 3-year school-specific projection was actually 2.08% off, or over-projected by that much. But a large portion of that is due to, obviously, COVID and us having 382 students leave the district to go to homeschool. So with all of that being said, each of the projections for next year actually does have us reducing in numbers. I don't see that happening, especially if we can get to the end of COVID. I see us recouping that at least 382 students, plus any of the new subdivisions that are slowly starting to come online, which they're becoming more and more numerous again lately. And looking at all the numbers, unfortunately, for some reason, last year, we thought that our birth rate was actually going to go up. It was ahead of where it was when I asked for the numbers last school year. And I guess nobody had babies like this October, November, and December of last year, because it actually is lower than it was projected to be. So with all of that being said, ultimately, I think
Don't
the
even
best
say it.
for us is the 5-year projection, which would put us losing 15 students. But again, I don't see that happening. I do see us, at the end of COVID, recouping the students. And again, like I said, we've got enough subdivisions coming online that we're going to be fine.
Yes.
and I will be more than happy to answer any questions of the multitude of pages that I usually give you.
Right, it's an excellent report, Mr. Williams. Questions or comments?
I'd just like to make a comment that, Michael's been doing this for quite a while, but COVID really moved his cheese. I mean, this is just hard to do with all the number of factors that we've got going on, and still to be that accurate is a pretty strong testimonial of the system that he works on and the amount of knowledge that he brings to the job.
Yes.
It's just incredible.
Absolutely,
Well, thank you.
And we
absolutely.
canceled all retirements for the next 5 years.
Well, that's debatable, but okay.
We gotta hang
Do you
on.
have a question? Mr. Woosley has a question.
So if the 382 homeschool children do not come back in, and we have these extra subdivisions coming online, what's that going to look for us next year?
In all honesty, Mr. Woosley, I couldn't give you an exact number, but I don't see us losing 15 students next year with the number of subdivisions that are started. I mean, I think I have 9 different plats that I still have to get in the system. So you're talking anywhere from 25 to 40 houses in each of those. So you've got a lot of new construction coming. And there's actually, you all approved tonight, those 2 new
Right.
capacity letters. So there's another whole 2 subdivisions that are coming.
So, Mr. Williams, those plats that you just referred to, those have not gone for capacity letters yet?
They've already been approved. Those are older subdivisions, and so that you all understand the process. When you all approve the capacity letter, it can be anywhere from the next day to the next month that I will go and I will testify in front of the Planning
Right.
Commission. Ultimately, the Planning Commission makes their decision based on our information and based on a lot of other information.
Right.
But it usually takes anywhere from a year to 2 years for them to get to record plat. And so there's always a year to 2 year lag, because what has to happen is they have to put in all the infrastructure before they can mark out lots and then begin to sell those lots and develop those houses.
So those 11 plats you referred to, we
You've
approved.
approved over the last several years.
I wonder how many students we have accumulated theoretically from all of those plats.
Right now, based on this year's number, it's 0.32 student per building permit.
Building, that's the bigger.
We've been as high as 0.5.
Right,
So we get a half a kid per building permit.
right.
Now, mind you, that's K-12. I can't specifically say we're going to get this many high school kids out of a subdivision,
Right.
so.
Wow.
Still growing.
Look out a few years down the road, Oldham County,
Well, and
assuming we
you've
have
got
no
enough
more.
other subdivisions that are rumored to get starting that we're going to be okay.
Yeah,
That's kind of where I was going, is I'm looking at the individual school numbers, and if we do get those 382 back, in addition to the ones that we've approved, are we looking at a rebalancing in 5 years if we need to be? Or are we 10 years?
Honestly, Mr. Woosley, I think we're going to have to build at least another elementary school or a K-8
yes.
before that, because you've got the Jones property, which potentially is 2,000 homes, and not counting, I don't know an exact number of the apartments at this point. So you're talking, we're going to start having to put schools back in the ground.
Yeah. We've actually touched on that subject already, so. Did you
Well, I was
want
just going to say, I mean, it's
comments?
one of the things that we know going into it. If you look at the schools, specifically Harmony, Goshen, Kenwood, South Middle, North Middle, there's not much room in those areas, for natural growth and stuff like that. So as the Jones property comes in, Michael and I had that conversation. Obviously, when we did the last rebalancing, the goal was to put off 3 to 5 years as much as we possibly can for the disruption. But this district traditionally, every 4 to 5 years, has had to rebalance or redistrict because of natural growth. And so if we were able to hold off to that, then we did what we said we'd have to do, and everybody will get mad again, but it'll be something we'll have to do.
And Mr. Davis can enjoy them getting mad at him. No.
Mr. Williams, for the sake of our virtual audience, describe where that Jones property is.
So
Please.
it runs from basically where Crestwood Baptist Church is to I-71, under I-71 to Old Brownsboro Road. It then hooks back in and comes in behind, and I can't think of the name of the subdivision. It literally hooks back in, back all the way to the driving range, basically. Thank you. No, is it? No, it comes behind Magnolia, but I'm talking Camden Manor and all of those. It hooks in behind all of that.
So the
It's
logical.
massive.
Yes. So the logical place for our K through 8 will be on the Brownsboro property.
Well,
Potentially.
I wouldn't bet money on it, but that's some logic going on there, yeah.
Yeah, I won't hold those bets until the superintendent and I talk a whole lot more.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Will you describe for everybody exactly where the Brownsboro property is, please?
If you want to give it a shot, I mean, I can, but he's going to give you a better street by street.
Okay, so it is sandwiched between 390 or 329, Halls Hill, and Old Zaring Road, and I can't think of the other piece of the cut-through road in there. Glenarm. And it's what, 100 acres?
Roughly. It
Roughly?
is roughly 100 acres.
It's enough, I think it was enough actually for a middle school, or elementary school and a middle school, I think was in the original plan that I saw.
So it's right in the sweet spot of that Jones property then?
Well, it's just
Near-
beyond it. It's
near
up the hill beyond it, basically.
Gotcha.
And it would give great relief to the schools that the superintendent just mentioned, especially the middle schools.
Correct. It would also put our fourth elementary school within a 3-mile radius.
Correct. So much food for thought. We appreciate the discussion. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Williams.
You're quite welcome.
Great report. All right. Superintendent? Oh, we're ready for action item H, please.
So action item H is consider the approval of fiscal year 21 final SBDM Section 6 allocation to schools. Stephanie's here if you have any questions on that. It's that time of the year where we make those number proposals.
Right. Questions or comments? Motion to approve, please. Is that your recommendation, Superintendent?
Yes, my recommendation is to approve.
Motion to approve made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Action item I, sir.
There is a hardship early graduation for 3 students. LH is a 17-year-old senior at BAHS. MF is an 18-year-old senior at SOHS. And RG is an 18-year-old senior at SOHS. All information is within your packet.
Yes, sir. Questions, comments? Your recommendation?
I recommend that the 3 students are allowed to graduate early on hardship request.
Motion to approve, please. Made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? That's 5-0. Action item J, sir.
If you remember last month when we did the special call, this is one of the topics on the KISTA funding. And so all the information is in there. We've had some time to talk about that at the board meeting. We have Mr. Webb, Ms. Anderson, Mr. Deves in the House if you have any further questions. But I would ask that the board approve KISTA bus purchases for fiscal year 2021 in the number of 14 buses this year. Stephanie and I and Brent and Jeff have laid out a pretty extensive, like a 25, 30-year plan on how this all rolls out with the bus purchases, and this seems to be the best way to take the first step forward and then use other sources of funding as we move on.
Thank you. We have had 2 fairly extensive discussions on the purchase of these buses. Again, we thank the Director of Transportation, Mr. Webb, for joining us and working with us, with Ms. Anderson, the superintendent, and Mr. Deves to develop that plan. Any questions at this time? Mr. Woosley?
Ms. Anderson, have you found an answer to if we could use the bonded construction fund money that's left over when those projects are finished to pay for some buses? There's about 1.9 million that'll be for the 3 projects that are mostly completed.
We won't be able to use it this year. We pretty
that's the money left over out of the bonded money
For this year,
that you have on your report, yes.
I believe that we can, but they don't really like it. They like to have the construction money for construction.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was gonna say,
Mr.
John.
Bohannon.
So the residual funds from construction money is still restricted in the same way that the original funds for that construction project were. So for instance, if you're using those funds for a priority 1 or priority 2 construction project, that leftover or residual funds is still itemized through KDE for that purpose. What we do when we we bring to you a new BG1, for example, let's say the last one we did was East Odell Middle School. The last line item on that is other residual funds that go into funding that. So that basically takes the residual funds from a previous project, once it's closed out through the BG5 process through KDE, and reallocates those to a project of the same priority. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bohannon. Other questions or comments? Mr. Dodson?
I was looking at this, and a recommendation would go one of two ways. Take some out of the contingency, and with KISTA, what is our exact contingency right now?
Y'all need.
I'm sorry.
unaware.
I'm sorry. All you gotta do is get close to it.
We're down to 9 million, I believe.
I mean, okay.
And so I would like to point out, one of the reasons why we're saying all out of KISTA this year is because the rate, if when we start talking about budget going into next year, which we're going to start seriously hammering some stuff out here in December and then get to y'all early, the next several years' buying plans will have money coming out of contingency as well as other funds as we readdress these things. This just happens to be the best time at this rate to keep the contingency fluid, because what we don't know is what next year brings.
And that's what I was trying to point out. I'd like to see us, we're gonna buy these 14 buses, buy them all under the KISTA, except for that partial one.
Right.
We can't do that. But buy them all under the KISTA, 1%, and leave the contingency alone on this.
Well, that's actually how the recommendation reads, Mr. Dodson.
I'm reading something wrong then.
The discussion says we are recommending purchasing up to 14 buses using KISTA financing. Other questions or comments? So your recommendation, Superintendent?
Use KISTA funding to purchase the 14 buses for fiscal year 2021.
Excellent. Motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Ms. Hundley. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for your help with that action item. Mr. Williams, do we have anybody here for public expression? I would just be shocked if we did.
Joyce?
Yes, sir.
On that one, if you go back and read the recommendation all the way through, it does say using general fund and or KISTA financing. And so we recommended approve KISTA bus purchase.
Right.
KISTA for the 14.
Right,
Okay, good.
right. Thank you. Since there is no public expression, board members, remember to review your information items, the monthly district energy usage, can't be very much, and the monthly preschool report. And we are ready to adjourn to executive session. The board needs to do this pursuant to KRS 61.8101C, the purpose of which is to discuss the following matters: 2 litigation matters pertaining to student injuries, 1 litigation matter pertaining to a non-student injury, and 1 special education matter. The board goes into this executive session pursuant to this KRS 61.8101C to discuss litigation preparation, the public disclosure of which would jeopardize the board's position. Motion to go into executive session, please. Made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Thank you, everybody.